All right, before we begin, I'd like to share some of the terms that we usually see in the rest of the discussion. So by the way, our discussion today is about emissions, ambient quality, and damages. So it's under economy and the environment. So these are the common terms that we can hear or that we can see in the rest of our discussions. So for example, we have ambient quality. So when we talk about ambient, it refers to the surrounding environment. So the ambient quality refers to the quality of pollutants in the environment. So for example, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the air over the city, or the concentration of a particular chemical in the waste in the waters of lakes. And then we also have environmental quality. So it refers broadly to the state of the natural environment. So this includes the notion of ambient quality and such things as the visual, aesthetic quality of the environment. And then we also have residuals. This means that these are the materials that is left over after something has been produced. So for example, a plant takes into a variety of raw materials and convert these into some products. Materials and energy left after the product has been produced are production residuals. So when consumer, aside from that, consumer residuals these are the leftover after consumers have finished using the products that contained or otherwise use these materials. And then we also have emissions, the portion of production or consumption residuals that is placed in the environment, sometimes directly, sometimes after treatment. And then, of course, recycling. So again, this is the process of returning some or all of the production or consumption residuals to be used again in the production or in consumption. And of course, the term pollutant will also be heard. So it's a substance, an energy form, or an action that, when introduced in the natural environment, results in a lowering of ambient quality level. So not only oil spilled into oceans or chemicals placed in the air are considered pollutant, but also activities such as certain building developments that results to visual pollution. So, naging nadoble ang pollutant, no? And we also have damages. These are the negative impacts produced by the environmental pollution on the people in the form of health effects, visual degradation, disruption of ecological linkages, species, etc. And then environmental medium. So it's a broad dimension of the natural world that collectively constitute the environment. So usually these are classified as land, water, and air. And then source. So this is the location at which emissions occur, such as factory, an automobile, or leaking landfill. And now let us focus on what happens at the end of these two discharges. So I'll be presenting a figure, a detailed figure for this. So this is the one I am talking about, the figure 3, which is the emissions, that will show you the emissions, ambient quality, and damages of a certain source. So I got this from the book of Environmental Economics and Introduction, the 7th edition, authored by Barry Field and Martha Field. So you can see we have sources 1 up to sources N. So different sources of emissions that we can put on. So emissions produce changes in ambient levels of the environmental quality, which in turn causes damage to humans and non-humans. So this figure is in one way of sketching out this relationship. So we can have sources 1 up to nth as mentioned. These sources can take various inputs and use different types of technologies in production and consumption. Along its process, they produce residuals here. How these residuals are handled are a critical effect on the subsequent stages of the flow. So some may be recovered and recycled back. Many can put through also treatment processes. All emissions must necessarily go into one or more of the different environmental media. So mentioned earlier that the environmental media is classified or composed of land, water, and air. And there is an important relationship among them. So in situation involving multiple sources, emissions will often become mixed up in a single flow. So like this one, okay, many multiple sources. So this mixing of emissions has a more significant problem. With multiple sources, responsibilities become less clear. So unlike single source, the line of responsibility is clear. So we know exactly whose emissions have to be controlled. Okay, ma-follow raman nato kay one single source raman siya. So once a given quantity and quality of residuals have been introduced into a particular environmental medium, it is the physical, the chemical, the hydrological, meteorological processes, and other processes of natural system that determine how residual translate into a particular ambient quality levels. So finally, there are damages. So out of those sources and then all the levels of the ambient quality, there are damages. A given set of ambient condition translates into a particular exposure patterns for living and non-living systems. So of course, these exposures are a function of not only of the physical processes involved, but also human choices. Damages can be related to human values. Human beings actually usually do not have clear preferences over or all possible outcomes of the economical or environmental interaction. So we normally prefer all possible outcomes over others. So this is actually a major part of environmental economics that we try to determine the relative values that the people place on these different environmental outcomes. All right, so I guess this is the end of this topic, emissions, ambient quality, and damages. So kindly check your USTEP account because I have placed there a activity regarding this process flow on the determination of damages or the emission flow or the residual flow of a certain sources. Thank you.